Hello and welcome back to Rear Winging It, the F1 podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Harry McKay, and I'm joined today by Ellie Ledwell
Hello.
and Kieran Ledwell.
Hello.
So, guys, we're back. Our last race before the little impromptu break in Suzuka, Japan. What did you guys think of the weekend?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good weekend. Qualifying was good, interesting. The race was good and interesting. Me being an old man, there's no sprint weekend to confuse me, so I enjoyed it.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it. What about you, Ellie?
Yeah. I think we've had a good start to the season. I
Yeah.
think Japan's one of people's preferred tracks, one of their favorite tracks. So it's nice to have it earlier in the season. You know, it's a newer place for it to be. To my knowledge, you know, it used to be a bit later on, so it's kind of nice to have it now. And have a good one early on and one everyone enjoys.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the same. I think overall it was good. I think there was a few little cracks, as there has been with sort of on the regulation side and drivers continuing to complain. But generally, I think it was fairly entertaining. Maybe not quite so much as the first two, but still some great moments. If we start off with qualifying, then again, quite a competitive one, really, especially for that Q1 session. We had Behrman surprise Q1 exit. Ellie, do you think this was a bit of a fluke, or what do you think happened here? Because it's been quite strong recently.
Yeah, he didn't seem to put the weekend together particularly well. I think, yeah, maybe a bit of a fluke. I think some of them are still getting to grips with the battery deployment, you know, and in qualifying, it's trying to start your hot lap with the right amount of battery. A lot of them are still trying to get their head around it, so I'm sure it'll just be like a one-off kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think when we've had drivers saying it feels quite counterintuitive when at times they should be going flat out. It's actually you get a faster lap if you're not doing that. So perhaps some of the sort of more rookie drivers struggling with that a little bit more. Yeah, Aston Martin's again a pretty dismal performance in qualifying. Lance especially missed Q2 by 2 whole seconds. Kieran, do you think there's any hope? I mean, obviously, Japan, Honda's home track. Do you think there's much hope here?
No, I don't think so. I think for them a good year for them now looks like getting as much data as possible and maybe getting into Q2 by the end of the season. That's probably their goal, to be honest, is to maybe try and get a car into Q2 or both cars into Q2. I'm not sure if Alonso's managed it yet. Yeah, it's looking pretty bleak. I mean, this was probably their best weekend, and that's saying something, right? They're still miles off the pace. I don't see much hope for them this year, but I think they kind of knew that even before they turned up for the season. So, new regulations, a throwaway year happens to be, like pancakes, right? You throw away the first one and move on, don't you? So, I'm sure they'll be back.
That's what they did with children as well. Like, you guys are both the eldest child, and that says enough.
Wow. Another team who's been struggling has been Cadillac, obviously new to the grid, so much more expected. But they both took 19th and 20th. They were about 1.2 seconds off Behrman in 18th, so still very much behind the pack there, and sort of saved from dead last, really, just because the Aston Martins weren't so good. But
It's
Perez seemed to
interesting
have
though, isn't it? Because last year, if you were a second quicker than the slowest drivers, you'd probably be 8th, 9th, something like that.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Whereas this year you're 20th.
You're just ahead of the slowest drivers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy the how wide the spread the grid is.
Big time.
I mean, if we take sort of the fastest time of Q1, yeah, we're over 2 seconds there. Nearly 3 seconds slower Lance Stroll was. than Antonelli's fastest Q1 time. So there's a big gap there. And that kind of time really can't be made up easily. So a lot of work for them to do. We also had Hadjar in P8 in front of Verstappen, who couldn't get into Q3 and qualified P11. Ellie, do you think this is a sort of symptom of his hatred for the regulations? Is the frustrating getting in the way? Is this, a skill? Is this Hadjar being, maybe overperforming our expectations? What do you think?
It's interesting that you said, like, is like his attitude kind of getting in the way? If he doesn't like it, is he just kind of, is it there a mental block there? I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think Hadjar's good, and I think Verstappen's not performing well. Normally, we say that if you give Verstappen a car, he will be able to extract everything out of that car, and this is probably the first season he's had in Formula One where that's not true, or at least the first season for a long time where that's not true. But I think Hadjar's just very competent, and I think, as you say, like, Verstappen just is not comfortable in this car with these regulations. So I think it's probably a bit of both of those things. But to have Lindblad finishing in P10, in the racing balls, to finish above Verstappen, that's not something we are used to seeing at all.
Yeah,
definitely not.
And like you said, Lindblad there in front of him and out qualifying his teammate Lawson as well. So another good performance from him. We did have, again, outscoring their teammates. Antonelli, P1, 0.3 seconds to Russell in P2. So second weekend in a row where he's really had a really strong performance. Do we think this is going to be, not a fluke, but, Russell seems to have had some issues with the car for both weekends. Do we think maybe there's more emphasis on that, Kieran, or what do you think?
Maybe. So Antonelli's time was his first run of Q3, not his second, right? So it was kind of wrapped up pretty quickly, and none of them could, neither driver could match that and do better than. So who's to know if there was any issues there, or just the track conditions weren't there for the second run. I'm not too sure whether it's a fluke. I think he is that quality of driver that is really coming to the fore. I think what I'd say is I think it's a good timing for Russell for there to be this impromptu break, like we mentioned at the start, to just get his head. I'm sure his head's in the right place anyway, right? He's second in the championship in the fastest car. I'm sure he's pretty happy. But it's a good time for a bit of a momentum arrest for him to stop Antonelli getting in too much of a groove, maybe. But I don't know. I think he's going to pick up more wins and more podiums this year for sure, and more pole positions. But whether he can do it week in, week out like Russell can, I mean, we haven't seen that from him yet. So this is the year to prove it, right? So it's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, because last season Antonelli had like a real dip in the middle, whereas Russell for the last year he was so consistent throughout. So consistency will play a big part this season if it's just two teammates against each other. Yeah. And I would favour Russell to be the more consistent.
Yeah, I think that's where my head's at. I think Antonelli clearly is doing, amazing work, but I think we do have to keep in mind, like you said, that consistency that Russell has shown the last couple of years. Really, he really is consistent, and I think that will easily have the edge over the season, but who knows. We had Piastri finally seeming the winds of luck going in his favour. The McLarens turned up with some decent pace this weekend. Piastri not far off Russell in Q3 and out-qualifying Norris by about 0.3 seconds. Were you happy, Ellie, with McLaren's performance this weekend?
Yeah, I think the Ferrari seems to do better with lower speed corners, and I guess like Suzuka has like a mix of both, but it's got some quite high speed corners in there. So I guess I was thinking maybe they would be a bit closer to the Ferraris, but I'm happy. Piastri seems to be more comfortable in the car than Norris, so happy to see Piastri finally maybe getting a bit of time in the car.
Actually running for once, yeah.
And they did end up splitting the Ferrari, so much more in the mix. We also had another good performance from Gasly. I'll just mention quickly that
Yeah.
Alpine does seem to be, in his hands at least, um, quite competent. Colapinto, though, didn't have such a good time and qualified 16th. Um, we know how brutal, uh, Flavio can be, so that will be one to watch whether that performance golf sort of stays.
Yeah, especially if they have a car that's like able to get points regularly. You know,
Yeah,
if you're
Yeah.
like finishing 12th and the other person's finishing 18th, it's like, well, no one's going to score any points. But if you have a driver who's finishing 6th, 7th, whatever, and getting like decent points, and you have another driver who's never scoring points, then
Puts it in
I think, yeah,
contrast
you're
for you.
right.
Yeah, it really puts it in contrast and makes the decision for the team principal a lot easier, doesn't it? So
so we'll move on to the race then. Um, Obviously, with the reliability issues that we've been having, this was the first race to actually have all 22 cars start, which was a nice change. And it was a hectic start, as the others have been. Antonelli lining up on pole only to have a pretty poor start,
yeah, rough.
and Piastri having a great start and taking P1. Um, Kieran, are you enjoying the starts? Do you think, as some have said,
They've been
they're sort of unfair, a bit dangerous? What are your thoughts?
they've been pretty hectic. I mean, they've been enjoyable to watch for sure. It was crazy to be honest. I think Antonelli went into P5 right off the start, which from first to fifth we haven't
P6.
seen that in a sixth even. Yeah, so first to sixth is pretty impressive for the wrong reasons, right? Well, you saw like from the
Yeah.
onboard of I think it was Piastri's onboard how much wheel spin Antonelli had off the line. So I don't know how much you can blame that on the new regulations if that was just a poor start in general. But hey, I mean, it's been the starts. They are chaotic, but they seem to, and obviously this is a tempting fate here. They seem to have been safe enough so far, with people getting off the line, and obviously the speed differences are creating good racing and interesting kind of situations like that. So I've been enjoying them. I think it's been made it really interesting, and given how easy it seems to be to overtake, I guess we'll come on to that more. But it almost feels like the start maybe isn't as important because it's so topsy turvy that as long as you're safe, you can kind of recover to where the pace of your car takes you. So it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, we then had, similar to the previous, obviously the Mercedes falling back. Um, Russell then overtakes Norris and Leclerc fairly quickly to retake sort of second place, but he can't pass Piastri. Um, Ellie, do you think that pace was quite pure from Piastri, especially since he managed to overtake Norris? Do you think that was the tyres starting to go out a little bit after he'd taken the previous two cars?
Do you know, with like I was watching it and it obviously I was a bit bleary eyed because it was ridiculously early in the morning and the clocks had changed and it was, my body thought it was 5 o'clock. So with the Piastri pace, I was surprised, but because I've not like seen Piastri race yet, it's hard to be like, oh, is this surprising pace or is this
Yeah, yeah,
where he would have been performing elsewise? But yeah, so I think Russell like maybe got past him at one point, but then like Piastri got the position back straight
Yeah,
away.
he
So
did.
like
Yeah,
Russell couldn't hold him, and then as you say, like the tires just Russell seemed not to be able to pass again and to make it stick, which did kind of surprise me. And maybe it was the tires going off a bit quicker because it was around like lap 10 and people were starting to complain about them. And in a 53 lap race, you don't want to be on bad tires so early on. So yeah, maybe. But then I'm surprised because the Mercedes seemed to be quite gentle on its tires in the first two races. So it's difficult, but being like so different and so early in it, it's hard to kind of tell what things mean.
yeah. It does feel like, I mean, we saw it here when Antonelli later on took the lead. It feels like the Mercedes engine is better in, well, it's obviously the best engine, but it seems to be better in that clear air, and it does then really take off.
yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe the advantage is neutralized a little bit. Perhaps that's due to the aero package, and maybe the Mercedes aero package isn't quite as good. Um, maybe Ferrari
Maybe
had
they
the
just
edge
felt
there.
like they were going to be in front of everyone, so they
Yeah,
didn't need
yeah.
They
one
didn't need
that
a car
worked
that could
behind
follow.
other people.
That was like the Red Bull in the
Yeah.
2010s, like in the Vettel era. Out front it was fine, but in dirt, yeah, it was terrible. I remember that because they knew that he'd be out front, so why design a car that's going to be good for dirt? Yeah.
Um, we had obviously then Norris, Leclerc, Antonelli all battling for P3, but really unable to make much headway or many moves. Do you think that was they all had that kind of under a second gap to each other? Do you think that was sort of hints of a new kind of DRS train and not being able to pass?
Yeah, maybe. So they obviously got the what is it? What's it called these days? The overtake button.
It's like the boost, overtake,
SM.
boost,
I don't know what
whatever
SM stands for. Everyone was mentioning speed mode. Let's call it speed mode. Yeah, I think just the nature of F1 is always going to be that dirt. Yeah, is going to hurt. So yeah, maybe we are going, as the teams, especially with upgrades coming, and the teams maybe converge a bit more and the gaps close up in terms of like the speed differences between teams, that maybe the speed mode will become the new DRS. We'll see. But I guess the difference is where you can deploy it's different, and maybe that's more down the angle of, I think, when people figure out different ways of deploying it. But then maybe they'll all come to a consensus of the best times to deploy it is on this straight and that straight, and then maybe it will become more DRS training and everyone's doing the same thing. So
yeah,
we'll have to wait and see. I guess it's the first example we've kind of had of that in 3 races. So well, we've got a while to wait now, but I guess it'll be interesting to see the next few races to see if that that kind of behaviour repeats itself.
So moving on to I think the sort of the biggest moment of the race, we had quite a nasty crash from Behrman. The sort of major part of it was the huge speed differential due to the battery deployment. Obviously, a lot of drivers have been warning of this. I know Sainz at the end of the race was very unhappy and said, there's a reason it was being brought up. I mean, it was a major crash, and obviously, luckily, he was all right, but I think he did hurt his knee slightly. Do we think this is a major issue that the FIA are going to be looking at, and are we going to see changes quick? Ellie, what do you think?
I think they're so they've got some kind of meeting or whatever over the next couple of weeks where they're going to discuss, but this is a track that has runoff areas and gravel before you hit the barriers, and so he hit it. It was pulling 50 Gs, which is massive.
Yeah.
And as you say, he was injured. He hurt his ankle and his knee, but he was scanned and he's not broken anything. So hopefully in the 5 weeks, he'll be able to recover and come back for the next race. But in a circuit, obviously not necessarily going as fast, but in a circuit that's a street circuit. Obviously, we don't have Saudi Arabia, which is one of the more dangerous ones. But in Miami, is our next race is a street circuit. If you have something like that happening there, where you don't have a runoff and a gravel trap, because even that didn't really slow him down. He was over the gravel before he hit the barrier.
Well, he was sideways very quickly,
quickly,
so there was no brakes to slow him down at all, really. So the speed he was at on the straight is essentially what he hit the wall at. Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine that on a street circuit where you're just straight into the wall, it just it is scary, and the drivers obviously they know it's dangerous and they're just trying to get across to the public, because it's hard for us to kind of understand it, and when you watch them it's hard to kind of think about actually how fast they're going. I know that sounds stupid, but you get so used to it you forget
it's 300 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, and you forget how dangerous it is when they crash. So I mean, hopefully something is done, but I don't really know what it is that can be done without an overhaul of these regulations, because the clipping and the way the batteries work, that's the problem, and I don't really know how you get around that. But hopefully they figure something out.
Yeah, I think it'll be hard to come to a consensus with it, like you said, and because it is so fundamental to the rules. But it does seem like there is a little bit more momentum, a little bit more understanding that, okay, we're going to look into it, we're going to see what we can do, which I know a lot of the drivers especially will be happy with for those safety concerns.
Yeah, it's just a shame, I think, that something obviously Ollie Behrman hopefully is absolutely okay, but it's a shame that there had to be a big crash
Yes.
before people started to take the drivers seriously.
Yeah, classic. It's always the way, isn't it? It's like, oh, we
Yeah.
never knew, but it's like you did. You were being told the whole time.
We then had Russell pitting the lap before the crash. He was on the radio, sort of complaining that they were keeping him out too long, and then almost forced that pit stop himself to then complain that he missed the safety car. Obviously, it was unlucky,
Very unlucky. Yeah.
but I think you know the moaning on the radio did make me laugh a little bit, and it was clearly his call to come in.
Definitely.
Yeah, because there's always the risk of like the overcut in Suzuka.
Yeah.
Often it's the undercut we talk about, but in Japan, going longer can be beneficial, right? And Piastri had just pit as well, or did they go in the pits at the same time? I think
He had pitted. Yeah.
he had pitted, so he was trying to do the overcut. Yeah, because it was taking them about 2 or 3 laps to get the tires up to temperature.
I just enjoyed on watching the race back where we were seeing like Bierman crash into the wall, then it just Russell radio pops up and it's just him going like, for F's sake, because of the safety car, and it's like he's just slammed into the wall at 300 miles an hour. Like, not that I'm sure, not that I'm sure he would have been worried about his status as well, but yeah, it was quite a funny thing for him to be moaning that much. It's like someone has just slammed into a wall here, George.
And Toto did come on the radio and sort of was like, calm down, get your head in the game, and
But imagine your big boss having to come on and be like, come on, do your job.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, but it's happened before. It happened a million times that someone gets unlucky with a safety car. It's just the nature of the sport, isn't it?
Definitely. And I mean, you have to then, I suppose, that's halfway into the race. There's a lot of race to go. I mean, the big winners of that obviously was Antonelli. Verstappen hadn't pitted, so that did help him a bit.
Yeah.
And Lewis Hamilton. Whereas you had Piastri, Leclerc, less so. But then, Leclerc ended up on the podium and Hamilton was down in P6. So, there is, especially if it happens on the pit stop with the safety cars, there is a lot of time left to put your head down. If you stay focused, and you've got the pace there, you can come back. So I think it's about maximizing those points when your luck doesn't go
especially with the
your
pace
way.
that the Mercedes has. You have to be aware of the car you're in and know that you'd rather be in the Mercedes and a place behind than in another car a place up, maybe, with the speed the car has. So yeah.
But I guess because in the first stint he was held up by Piastri and couldn't get past, being put out of position, like, obviously, as we said, Antonelli and Hamilton got a cheap pit stop from it. It wasn't as if he was thinking, oh, I can easily make these up, because he had only a few laps before been stuck behind and unable to pass. So
Yeah, true.
there was that to it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And the frustration is, it's expected and it's, is natural. We then had so Antonelli then obviously retakes the lead through this, but he does manage to pull away from Piastri. Nearly 14 seconds by the end, he was in front. Really showing some good pace there. I think proving that he has that race pace as well as being quick in qualifying.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, just how fast that Mercedes is in free air.
Yeah, definitely. I think the clean air thing seems to be becoming quite a big thing, to be fair, because the fact he managed to pull out so far, but Russell couldn't work his way up to P2 or 3, is quite surprising almost, actually, that he didn't work his way through the field more. So, yeah, well, maybe it'll be an interesting point throughout the season that how important that clean air is for a Mercedes. Maybe as the other teams close up with upgrades and stuff, it might become a bit of an issue for them. Well, that'd be an interesting one to watch, actually.
Yeah, but I was surprised that he struggled in the dirty air as much as he did.
Yeah, definitely.
Another person struggling, as we mentioned, Max, spent pretty much the whole race behind Pierre Gasly, especially that last stint. I think he was. I think the frustration then moved into sort of acceptance. I think he said afterwards he was just counting down the laps till the end of the race,
Yeah.
which I suppose once you've reached acceptance, I think there's a bit of a worry that maybe
Yeah.
he's sort of thrown in the towel a little bit. Not to take away from Gasly, who did have a great performance there in seventh, again,
Big time.
sort of best of the rest, but not even that being the top four teams. So impressive from him there.
Definitely. It seems like the regulations are suiting Gasly quite well so far. He's just a smart, switched-on driver. I think you can always say that about him. He's always been a very solid midfield driver, really. Obviously he had a stint at Red Bull and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
he's always been a very solid driver, a race winner. Clearly he's just adapted to the rules a bit quicker than everyone else at the minute, or in his hands that Alpine's looking pretty racy.
I think other than when he was with the Red Bull, I think he's always done quite well compared to his teammates. I don't know the statistics on that, but just from a feeling,
Vibes-wise,
I feel
yeah.
like vibe-wise,
Better than
yeah.
Ocon when
I
he's
don't know
with
if that
Ocon,
counts
for
in the
sure.
record books, but
Do you think there's a chance if he does keep this performance up, maybe say he I mean it's a long season, but maybe he's there and thereabouts with the sort of the Red Bulls, and he's consistently in that top 10, especially if Colapinto maybe he's not at that level. Do you think there's a chance that he could maybe look to one of the other top teams again and have that sort of second chance in the top team? Or do you think maybe Alpine and hoping they do the best is where he'll sort of be for the remainder of his career?
yeah, I don't really know of the top teams.
There's no space
Like
at the
McLaren
minute. Yeah.
seem pretty fixed. Mercedes, unless Mercedes drop Russell, I don't think they're gonna. Which I don't think they're going to. So it's just kind of what team would have him. And I guess the question, obviously, of Max's future, but I don't know if Gasly is the driver they would look to. So I think potentially for Gasly, unfortunately, his time in the top teams may be beyond
I think
him.
just timing-wise, I think the next five, I think the top teams, until Hamilton retires, I think that Hamilton will be the first of the drivers at the top six to leave just through retirement. If not, well, we'll come on to Verstappen more in a minute because he's obviously not happy. And then at that point, I think Ferrari already have Oliver Bierman lined up and ready, especially if it is in 2 or 3 years' time when that happens. That I just think the top teams are quite locked for the next 5 years, which is quite unheard of in F1 really. But it really does feel for the next 5 years we're probably going to see this line up amongst the top teams. Not including
unless
Red Bull,
someone has
who
a
knows,
real
but
big
3.
fall off,
The Astons of Alonso actually managed to finish a race without sort of retiring for a bit and coming back out. So something positive to take away. Some data
Green
would have been gained there. I suppose in contrast to the Williams, Albon finished 2 laps down, just running tests at the end of the race. Really, not competitive at all. Do we think as the season goes on, Williams are going to catch more and more heat, and especially with that contrast to the Astons?
Yeah, I think it depends on what way the Aston Martin project trends. If they are flatlining here, then it's one thing. But if they start to be able to pull a bit closer, then yeah, I think James Vowles is going to come under some heat, especially considering this year's performance relative to last year's.
Yeah, and given it was all about this year as well, I think that's the big thing. It was
Yeah.
He's on the record very publicly saying, I don't care about 23, 4, 5, whatever it was. 26 is the year. Well, if this is the year, I mean, it's really not been good for them so far. So I think putting so much stock into this year is probably going to come back to haunt them quite a bit.
I suppose finally on the race then, we've had 3 races in now, still early days to the regulations. But I just want to get a little bit of overview of how you guys are feeling so far. Obviously, we've had, by the end of the race, I think P2 to P4 were all fairly close, I think within 3 seconds, Antonelli being the exception and quite far off. So it's not like, there's been a massive shake-up and we're having massive gaps between each team, there is still some close racing. So I just wondered, sort of, Kieran, maybe first, how you're feeling about it. What's the kind of vibes, maybe more than anything?
The vibes are good. I'm enjoying what I'm seeing. I really am. I don't know, to give a slightly odd answer. I think I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing, but there's something in the back of my head when I see an overtake that just makes me feel like they just don't feel as genuine as they have in the past. And I don't know if that's just me getting used to a new style of racing, but a lot of these overtakes we're seeing does just feel like you can see, oh, this person's now deploying the battery more than the other person, so they're going to overtake, and that person's going to have the advantage back. And I think getting used to that style of racing is what we're going to have to do. But what we're watching in terms of the people changing positions a lot has been really good. It has been really interesting, and I don't think the results have been predetermined. This week kind of proves that Mercedes aren't just going to run off into the sunset every single week. So I'm excited of what I'm seeing, and I want to see more of it for sure. But the quality of overtake I'd like to see improve. But generally, I've been very happy with what I'm seeing. To give you an odd answer there.
Yeah, I know. Ellie, what do you think?
Well, when you can like test drive a car, if I was like test driving this season, I think I'd go away and think about it. I wouldn't necessarily reject it, but I wouldn't necessarily be like, yes, I want this now. So I think just the coward's answer is probably to say I'm still on the fence. I'm enjoying the races, but as Kieran said, there's that part of it where it's like, is this still the same thing that I fell in love with when I was a kid? When I was, 5 years old, watching Lewis Hamilton in 2007 nearly win the championship, and I'd been like so... I don't know, I remember just loving the sounds that they made and loving the thrill of it all, and I think maybe a part of that has gone a bit. Maybe it's a bit less thrilling, but ask me maybe when we break for the summer, and I'll give a more definitive answer.
Yeah, I think I'm fairly similar on the same page. I think qualifying, I would say I'm enjoying less this season.
Yeah.
I think that one lap pace of being on the limit, being on the edge, becomes much more important for qualifying. So when that's not the case, I think you can sense it. I think, Kieran, like you said, in the back of your head, not quite sure knowing. I think that comes through in qualifying when you're on board with the lap and you see the clipping, and it does feel wrong, and you want to watch a lap and just feel that it's on the edge, feel that car just could be seconds away from slipping and into a wall, but oh no, they managed to hold it, and it's a great lap. That's, I think, so far I haven't seen a lap this season like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Again, it's early, but I think with the racing, we've seen some great battles, not just one overtake, not to we've seen some great battles, and I think that is great for me. I think I like that. I like that it's not a one and done, or you have to have a massive tire offset or pace offset to get past someone. I think we've seen some great overtakes with Leclerc. Did a really, really nice one. It was the overtake of the race for me, going around the outside, round one of the corners, and it was beautiful. And I think Hamilton did quite a similar one.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think we're seeing more of that. There are quite a few where it's okay down the straight, massive speed differential. It's maybe more of a speed differential, but with DRS we did see the same thing. So it's hard to put a final judgment on it, but I think overall I am mostly enjoying it.
Yeah.
But yeah, a 5-week gap, I think it'll be interesting to see if we're all chomping at the bit for another race, or whether we sort of take it or leave it kind of thing. I think it might be a good test. Yeah. So driver of the day, Kieran, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. I was just racking my brains actually, knowing that driver of the day was coming up. And I was thinking Antonelli. He was definitely the fastest person. Despite the poor start, he was the fastest guy on track, regardless. So probably fair to give it to him. But actually, I think I'm going to give it to Oscar Piastri. if anything, you could argue that it would have been very tight, and a badly timed safety car could have cost him a race win, which I think his race engineer was on the radio saying they were not expecting that at all. So given it's his first time he's actually got the car to a start line and started a race, he should be really happy and proud of himself for that. So I'm going to give it to Oscar Piastri.
No, good choice. Ellie, who's your driver of the day?
I mean, honourable mention obviously to Piastri, to Gasly, but my driver of the day, and this is completely unsurprising, is obviously Fernando Alonso. He finished a race and he didn't finish last, which is much more than I was expecting coming into this weekend. So I'm going Fernando.
Nice.
No, great choice, yeah. You mentioned Gasly. I think I'm going to have to give it to Gasly. Qualified 7th, finished 7th. Only the sort of top 3 teams, I guess, at the moment in front of him. But really, it's for that stint holding off Verstappen. I know the car is performing not very well, but still, to be able to hold off Verstappen for that long behind you is quite impressive.
Yeah.
And I think he's doing good things in the Alpine, so I think Gasly for me this week.
Good choice.
So,
It hurts you, right, Harry?
It does hurt me. Because I like Gasly, don't get me wrong. But, God, the Alpine, man. Ellie, if you want to now take us away with grid news.
Hello and welcome to Grid News. I'm not sure if this is really news, but Verstappen seems very unhappy with the regulations and he doesn't mind who he tells about this. He's even hinted that he might be considering his future in Formula One beyond the end of this season because, he said, and it's understandable, he said, he'd rather be at home with his family. And he has his own adventures in other formulas. He was denied a win recently due to some tyre issue at the Nürburgring. I think they used too many tyres. So he won but was then disqualified. So, he enjoys racing. It's not just Formula One. And so, he could be tempted elsewhere. We've spoken about that before, but it was a comment that I think it was him and Lando Norris were kind of talking about after the race and asking what needs to change, what in the regulations kind of needs to change to make them a bit happier. And I think they both said nothing's going to change if the fans enjoy it. And I guess that's the question. Are the fans enjoying it? Are the fans preferring this kind of racing? And if so, maybe there won't be the change that Verstappen wants. The other question is, should they change it to keep Verstappen in the sport? Is he so big and so valuable to the sport that it's worth kind of overhauling things just to keep one person in? So it'd be interesting to see where that develops. I think I
think maybe Verstappen is not big enough for that. But when a lot of this is coming down to the engines, a lot of the engine manufacturers are sort of in there for these regulations. We had Audi join for it. We have Honda who obviously left and came back for it. So I think maybe the drivers aren't big enough, but some of these engine manufacturers are.
Good point.
But then you've got to please the people on the other side who are not. So I think that will be a big contention sort of point.
Yeah, no, but that's a really good point, isn't it? If the people making the engines are not happy with the regulations, then maybe we'll see some movement. But that's in the next few weeks. We'll hear about that.
Yeah.
Piastri made a comment, I think, after the race, which kind of made me laugh. He was like, "Cool, this car's quick when we actually get to race it." So it was nice to see him enjoying it because Norris is a bit more in the Verstappen doom and gloom camp. And it was nice to see Piastri's more in the Hamilton, this is great kind of group. So it was nice to see
like he finished P2.
that. And it'll be interesting. No, I know, but it's just when he has been able to race.
Well, this is the first time, right? Yeah.
He has been better than Norris, and they're in the same car. It's not like Verstappen's, he doesn't have somebody else in his car complaining or whatever. Whereas with the Piastri Norris, it's interesting because they're in the same car, but they're having kind of different experiences with the regulations. That's all. Antonelli becomes the youngest driver to lead the championship. Obviously, it's a long way to go. 19 races left. We'll see where that develops. But to be a teenager and to be leading the championships, an incredible achievement.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Also, Verstappen news is he banished a journalist from a press conference. So it was a journalist who, at the end of last season in Abu Dhabi, asked him if he regretted deliberately, I don't think the word deliberately was used, but deliberately crashing into George Russell earlier on in the season, saying, this cost you 9 points or whatever, and you would have won the championship. And yeah, this journalist was kicked out of the press conference. Max said, "I'm not starting until you leave." Kieran, you said you thought this was a bit childish, yes?
I mean, it is, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
he's a journalist doing his job, asking questions. I think it's a fair question to ask. Maybe it stings a bit on the day you've just lost the championship, of course, but it's true. It did cost. I mean, then Verstappen has also answered questions on that topic recently as well, and spoke about how he kind of, well, maybe not regrets it, but spoke about his thoughts and feelings at that time. So he's willing to talk on the topic. So I guess this guy just rubbed him up in the wrong way by asking on that particular day. But he's just doing his job, isn't he? Like, it's
exactly. And also they have like an obligation to speak to the media. It's interesting. Like, obviously Verstappen's one of the sport's biggest stars, and if it had been somebody like Esteban Ocon who had made this comment, I think maybe the media would have reacted differently to it.
Well, I think they would have laughed if he tried it.
That's the thing. Whereas I think, so anyway, moving on, Fernando Alonso becomes a father. He missed part of the weekend because he was at the birth. So we talked about this, about how many of the racing drivers are fathers. There's not many, but in the last, we've got Max now, Alonso now. There's got quite a few more. But there was a while where it was like just Hulkenberg. Oh, does he?
Maybe.
Ocon?
I might be wrong.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, it's just interesting. It's obviously not a sport like conducive to having children, And I think the big news of the last 2 weeks is the rumblings over at Aston Martin. Obviously, things are not going well. It's been announced Adrian Newey will not be continuing on as the team principal. Like, he will still be at Aston Martin, but I think it makes sense that he spends his time where he is most valuable, and that's not dealing with the stakeholders and the meetings with advertisers and all of that admin-y, boring stuff. He's best utilised in the design of the car. And then Jonathan Wheatley has left Aldi. It was a mutual consent, was it? They thought he was talking to someone else and they kind of got rid of him. He wanted to go, so potentially there for the new Aston Martin team principal, but we'll see how that develops over the next few weeks. And that is the end of Grid News. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellie. Definitely a shock, Wheatley leaving Aldi. I think he obviously moved to Switzerland for it, moved his family there, so perhaps he's wanting to be back in the UK, perhaps the money Aston Martin's going to throw at him. But they also have
Matteo Bonotti at Audi. It was kind of like a twin leadership situation.
Yes.
So
and he's just taking it on full time now, right? It's like that's the replacement.
So.
An odd choice from Wheatley, I think, but we'll see. We'll see if he joins Aston Martin and see what happens there.
Can't make it worse.
Well, yeah, exactly. Only ways up.
It's like whoever takes over at Spurs. Only way it's down in that case. Sorry.
Yeah, true.
I hope so.
Sorry,
I hope so. We've got our 5-week gap, unfortunately. So a little while to wait, but then we'll arrive in Miami. Are you guys excited? Do you like Miami? And what are your sort of predictions? Ellie,
every year we go to Miami, I'm like, ugh, Miami. And then it's a better race than I want it to be because I want to not like Miami.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So do you know what? It's hard to predict because so much can change. But I know at the beginning of the season, McLaren were kind of targeting like the Bahrain, Saudi Arabia for their first big upgrade packages. So I am going out on a limb and I'm saying an Oscar Piastri win. I'm going to say George Russell second, Antonelli in third. Crazy.
Nice.
I like that.
Kieran, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll do mine. Yeah, so I kind of agree with Ellie that Miami normally turns out better than I expect. And similar to Japan, when Japan a few years ago really had an issue with overtakes, it was a lot better. We obviously touched on that. So maybe the slightly smaller cars with more overtaking will make it quite an enjoyable race. With that being said, with it being such a tight track, I think the start will be very important here. So I'll give the Ferraris some love. I think Leclerc is going to take it, finish first. Then we'll have Russell and Hamilton in third. That's my top three.
I think Russell will return to form. I think there'll be a lot of obviously naysayers, people who don't like Russell so much. Maybe it's a long gap. I think they'll be sort of maybe overestimating Antonelli's chance to win the whole thing, and I think he'll come back strong and put a halt to that conversation there. So I think he'll be first, with maybe Antonelli second, and then Piastri third. Let's go. But like you said, Ellie, I think it's quite unpredictable, and especially with the gap and upgrades, who knows? So we come now to the best segment. Final thoughts. Kieran, take us away. What are your final thoughts for today?
Oh, final thoughts. God, I didn't think about this at all. My final thoughts are that. My final thoughts are that this might be more than a 2-horse race with Mercedes. I think maybe the McLarens, if they nail it a few more weeks and bring a good upgrade package, could get into the fight. So I'm excited to see in the next few weeks, well, after 5 weeks, whether or not we're looking at more than a 2-horse race. So I'm excited that the championship might have opened up a little bit more.
Ellie, final thoughts?
Mine is I am glad that I don't have to wake up at like the early hours of the morning anymore.
Yeah.
On a Sunday, I think we're kind of past that for a while, so that is my final thought. I'm gonna be laying in for the next while.
Summer holidays.
I will say that was going to be my final thoughts. Getting up at the equivalent of 5 a.m. and then having to sit in the hotel bathroom to watch the race was not really fantastic. So getting back to a bit of normal schedule time would be quite good. I think it's a shame, obviously, with the cancelled races, but definitely the right decision. But a 5-week gap, I think, is going to be pretty tough. So, I hope everyone finds some way to cope. Maybe some other motor racing in the gap. But thanks a lot for listening to today's episode, and we'll see you again in 5 weeks. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye. Finito. Nice one. Let me just stop my recording.